Dr. Zakir Naik, the most famous Islamic scholar on planet Earth, claims that Islam is a religion of peace. He challenges his listeners and viewers where Islam expanded by the sword. He gives several examples, particularly of Indonesia, and asked who conquered Indonesia militarily. As far as he's concerned, Islam is a religion of peace. If you are new here, welcome to Tell Me Dr. K, a channel manipulative religious leaders wish you never discover. Because on this channel, we cut through the noise to expose what is underneath. If you are new here, kindly subscribe and smash the notice bell so that when we upload another video, you receive a notification. And by so doing, you support us to continue bringing you more deep dives and breakdowns like this one. But in this expose, we step into the childhood of Brigitte Gabriel, whose life was shattered by militants claiming to act in the name of Islam. By the end of this video, you will answer the question: how do you reconcile the peace claims of Dr. Zakir Naik and other Islamic scholars and followers with a lived experience of someone who survived such brutality? Here is a clip from Dr. Zakir Naik claiming Islam is a religion of peace.
The question posed was, if Islam is a religion of peace, how come it was spread by the sword? Islam comes from the root word salam, which means peace. It also means submitting your will to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Almighty God. In short, Islam means peace acquired by submitting your will to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm asking you a question, that we Muslims, we ruled Spain for about 800 years. Later on, the Crusaders came and they wiped out the Muslims. There was not a Muslim who could openly give the azan, the call for prayers. We didn't use any force. You know, we Muslims, we ruled the Arab lands for about 1400 years. For a few years, the Britishers came. For a few years, the French came. But overall, the Muslims were the lordship of the Arab land for 1400 years. Do you know today, there are 14 million Arabs who are Coptic Christians. Coptic Christian means they're Christians since generations. Since generations. If the Muslims wanted, they could have converted every non-Muslim at the point of the sword. We didn't do it. The 14 million Arabs or Coptic Christians are giving witness that Islam wasn't spread by the sword. You know India? India was ruled for hundreds of years by the Muslims. We didn't use the sword. We didn't use the sword. If few people do a wrong thing, you can't catch up those people and blame the religion for that. If few people don't follow the religion, you can't say that Christianity is bad because Hitler incinerated 6 million Jews. If Hitler incinerated 6 million Jews, burned 6 million Jews, you can't blame Christianity for that. There may be black sheep in every community, but we Muslims, we ruled India for hundreds of years. If we wanted, we could have forced every non-Muslim to convert at the point of the sword. We didn't do it. The non-Muslims of India today, more than 80%, they are giving shahada, they are giving witness. You non-Muslims present here are giving witness that Islam wasn't spread by the sword. You are giving witness. We had the power, we didn't do it. Islam doesn't believe in that. Today, the country which has the maximum number of Muslims is Indonesia. Which Muslim army went to Indonesia? Which Muslim army went to Malaysia, which has 55% population of Muslims? Which Muslim army went to the east coast of Africa? Which Muslim army? Which sword?
The fall of Lebanon. Now, Gabriel starts her personal testimony in a speech she made in the US in 2016, painting a vivid picture of Lebanon, which was considered as the Paris of the Middle East and the only majority Christian nation in the Middle East. She emphasizes the history of tolerance, multiculturalism, and economic prosperity. She argues that this westernized society began to crumble when the balance of power shifted and Muslims became the majority, setting a stage for a civil war, which she believes was the first front in the worldwide jihad. Here is the clip.
As you can tell, I'm very passionate about the national security issue because it has affected my life personally. And I know a lot of you here tonight who came to this meeting because you heard me give an interview on the radio talking about national security and terrorism, who may not know my background. So I'm going to share with you 5 minutes as to where this fire within comes from. I was born and raised in Lebanon, which used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. We were open-minded, we were fair, we were tolerant, we were multicultural. We prided ourselves in our multiculturalism. We had open border policy. We welcomed everyone into our country because we wanted to share with them the westernization which we had created in the heart of the Middle East. Muslims send their children to study in our universities because we had built the best universities in the Middle East. They graduated and worked in our economy because we had built the best economy in the Middle East, even though we did not have any oil. Beirut became known as Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East. National Geographic magazine in 1965 had on its front cover, Lebanon, Eden of the Middle East. Unfortunately, all that began to change as the Muslims became the majority and the Christians became the minority. My 9/11 happened to me in 1975 when radical Islamists blew up my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble wounded as they shouted Allahu Akbar. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months. And as I laid in a hospital bed, hooked up to IVs in both arms, I would ask my father, why did they do this to us? And my father would tell me, because we are Christians, the Muslims consider us infidels, and they want to kill us.
Personal trauma and the fight to survive. In this clip, Gabriel recounts the moment her childhood ended, her 9/11, when radical Islamists bombed her family home. She shares the traumatic realization, I learned from my father that I was wanted dead simply because I was born in a Christian faith. We then hear about the cruelling 7 years she spent living underground in an 8 by 10 foot bomb shelter, crawling for meager food and water under constant lethal threat of snipers. Here is the clip.
I ended up leaving the hospital and coming back home, but my home was no longer the home I left. I ended up living in a bomb shelter underground in an 8 by 10 room, without electricity, without water, and with very little food. To get some food, we would crawl out under the bombs, and we would dig out dandelions and different vegetation that grew around our bomb shelter, because it was the only greenery we had to eat. To get some water, we would crawl under snipers' bullets to a nearby spring. And every time, before we left our bomb shelter, we would say our last goodbyes, because we did not know if we're going to come back alive or dead, just to get a drink of water, because we were surrounded by snipers shooting at us. This became my existence. And in the beginning of the war, we thought America's going to come save the Christians. My father would say, all the big Christian countries are going to come to Lebanon and save the Christians and see what's happening to the Christians. Because that's when the massacres happened.
Atrocities against Christians and Western abandonment. But here, Gabriel details the extreme brutality of Islamic militants, including specific atrocities such as crucifixions and the forced killing of a child by the hand of the mother, and insisted that the Western media deliberately ignored. Most crucially, this segment expresses the profound sense of betrayal as she and her family waited desperate for Christian nations, especially America, to intervene. This sense of abandonment defines her fear, culminating in a heart-wrenching moment where, at age 13, she prepared for death. Here is the clip.
The Muslims used to walk into a bomb shelter. In a Christian town, they used to surround the Christian towns, walk into a bomb shelter, find a mother and a father hiding with a little baby in a bomb shelter. They would take the baby, tie one leg of the baby to the mother and another one to the father, and pull the parents apart, splitting the child in half. They used to walk into our churches, urinate and defecate on the altar, destroy our churches, and use the Bible as toilet paper. They used to surround Christian cities and crucify men One of the most famous massacres in Lebanon was the massacre of the Moor, where they would go in, the Christians hid in the churches, they thought they would be safe, where the Muslims went in and literally crucified Christians. People hear about ISIS today and they think this is new. This is a new phenomenon, killing the Christians. The last lady that worked for me, I hired her because she was mentally disturbed when I was in Lebanon. I hired her so I can take care of her, because the Islamists walked into her bomb shelter. They took her only child, 16 years old, tied him on her lap, held a knife to her hand, and made her slit her own son's throat, and then raped her 2 daughters in front of her. That's the news that was seldom reported in Western media, because all the media was located in West Beirut, the area that the Palestinians headed by Yasser Arafat controlled. And everybody ignored what was happening to the Christians. We knew what our fate was going to be. And my father said, well, the big Christian cities, the big Christian countries are hearing about what's happening in Lebanon. France is going to come. Britain is going to come. Australia is going to come save the Christians. America is going to come save the Christians. But the world forgot about us. I ended up living in that bomb shelter for 7 years of my life, from the age of 10 till the age of 17, fighting to survive, robbed of my youth. I remember 3 years into our ordeal, one of our Christian militia friends stopped by and he said, Brigitte, we heard a lot of chatter on the radio, and I just want you to know that we know we're going to be attacked tonight. And he said, if I don't see you tomorrow, I wish you a merciful death. And he left. And I remember at the age of 13 years old, putting on my Sunday best, my Easter dress, because I wanted to look pretty when I am dead, knowing that when they come to slaughter me, there would be no one to bury me. And I remember begging my mother, I don't want to die, please, I don't want to die, as she combed my long black hair down to my hips and tied a white ribbon in my hair. And there was nothing my mother could say to me. And we sat in the corner of our bomb shelter. And my father started reading from Psalms. I shall walk into the valley of death and fear no evil, for thou art with me. And my parents said to me, we will create a distraction. If they come to slaughter us tonight, we just want you to run towards Israel and don't look back. Never look back. We lived a long life. You see, we lived 5 kilometers from the Israeli border. Thank God I did not have to make that decision that night, because that's the night when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and established the security zone and set up artillery bases around our towns to stop the Islamic radicals from coming and the Palestinians from coming in and slaughtering us. And this is how we lived for another 5 years in that bomb shelter until 1982, when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and working with the Christians, invaded Lebanon, working with the Christians, trying to help the Christians take back their democracy and kick out the radical Islamic element that had taken control of the country at that time. Because by the time Israel came into Lebanon in 1982, we had 11 Islamic terrorist organizations operating out of Lebanon at that time. And this is how Israel came in, and that's how we came out of our bomb shelter and back to rebuilding our lives.
This deeply personal account serves as the foundational argument for Gabriel's entire analysis. She uses the destruction of Lebanon to demonstrate a pattern. A tolerant, Western-allied minority group was ethnically and religiously cleansed by a militant ideology. Our takeaway is clear. The indifference of the Western world to Christians abroad is not just moral failure, but a dangerous foreshadowing of what could happen if this ideology is not taken seriously at home. In the next episode, we dig deeper in the history of Islamic militants from Gabriel's perspective. If you enjoyed this video, kindly like, subscribe, and smash the notice bell for more. To watch other videos on Christianity versus Islam, click on this link.